Thank you very much, Abby, and to all the participants of this webinar. And I'm very delighted to make this presentation. And I'll begin by providing a brief background on the Maritime Center and where our mandate stems from. As you may all recall, Kenya hosted the Sustainable Blue Economy Conference in 2018. And in the outcome document, which is the Nairobi Statement of Intent on advancing the global sustainable blue economy, Kenya committed to establish an Institute for Blue Economy and Ocean Studies at the University of Nairobi. So this institute is domiciled at the Faculty of Law and is called the Maritime Center or the Fish Force Academy. So our mandate, as per the commitment, is to undertake research and offer technical assistance and capacity building in all matters relating to the ocean and the sustainable use of its resources. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. I think my previous presenters, especially Team Andrew, has provided the regional context for MSP in the Nairobi Convention area, which is the 10 countries of the Western Indian Ocean region. And we find that MSP has often been connected to blue economy initiatives. And the team has given examples of countries that have already advanced to this. We have the Seychelles, that is quite advanced, and also South Africa with Operation Pakisa. And if you look at the last decision of the Conference of Parties, which was COP10, that was COP9, there was a standalone decision on marine spatial planning for the blue and ocean economy. So you can clearly see here that MSP is being carried within this context. If you look at the highlighted areas, you'll see that there is no separation of MSP from the blue economy. For example, you can see in Decision 1, countries agreed to continue to advance blue or ocean economy approaches in the context of SDG 14 as pathways for sustained incomes and economic benefits from natural blue capital. In the second decision, in the highlighted areas, you can see that contracting parties agreed to develop area-based management tools, such as marine spatial planning, to promote blue economy pathways in the Western Indian Ocean region. And finally, on the third one, the Secretariat was tasked to develop capacity building programs on MSP as a tool for sustainable economic growth. So that really is the context within which blue economy MSP is being carried out under the region. Next slide, please. Thank you. I think there's a bit of some delay in the moving from one slide to the other. So my topic for today is on assessment of Kenya's blue economy. And the Maritime Center was contracted by the Nairobi Convention Secretariat this year to conduct an assessment of Kenya's blue economy. And the assessment has 4 main objectives. So the first one is to assess the current contribution of ocean sectors to Kenya's GDP. There is already some effort that has been made towards this by the different sectors. I know the CAMFRI did an assessment in 2018. The maritime industry also has assessments. So, however, all this information is scattered within the sectors. So that's why we want to consolidate all this information in one document. Secondly, we want to assess the values of ocean sectors and the potentials for further development and investment. So we want to see what do we have in each of the sectors, what is explored and what is unexplored. And thirdly, we will identify the policy and governance gaps in each sector and make recommendations on the policy tools that can support the development of a sustainable blue economy. And one of the tools in this case is marine spatial planning, but it's not the exclusive tool that we shall look at, the policy tool that we shall look at. So our approach in undertaking this assessment, firstly, it is transdisciplinary. Even though the center is domiciled within the Faculty of Law, the team of experts includes scientists, lawyers, and economists. Secondly, we shall involve all the relevant stakeholders, both from the national and county governments. We shall engage with the private sector and the civil society. Thirdly, the assessment shall be science-informed, so which means that we shall use the best available data within the sectors. And lastly, we shall work closely at the science policy interface. So one of the outputs of our process is to contribute to policy development for the economy. Next slide, please. Okay, so the assessment focuses on 7 key sectors and subsectors for the assessment. We decided to classify it this way, given the priorities of each sector and the social economic importance for livelihoods and the Kenya economy in general. So if you look at the sectors, there's not a specific theme for all of them, but we shall prioritize as we move along. So the work has already begun and we should be able to start pretty soon. However, I wish to just delve in one or two sectors and provide an idea of what we want to do. For example, coastal tourism. We know that there has been reliance on wildlife and beach tourism for many years. So what we shall be looking at in these studies is to go beyond that and look for strategies for economic diversification in the sector. And for example, look at special interest tourism. There was a presenter yesterday from the National Museums, and he talked about cultural heritage tourism, which has a lot of potential for this country, but has not been explored. So we want to assess the value of such unexplored sectors. For example, if you look at other regions of the world and other countries, their tourism products are diversified, and we've not been able to do that. If, for example, the Caribbean has, we are talking of things like sailing competitions, gastric tourism, even making the coast a golf destination of the world. If you look at countries like Thailand, like Phuket Island, it is the #1 golf destination in the world, and with generating about 2.2 billion US dollars per year. So is there potential for Kenya to do that, for example? What about cruise tourism and conference tourism? So these are really some unexplored areas that need to be taken into account. And in doing so, we also have to maintain our relevance in the region. That's and also maintain our competitiveness in the region. If you look at our neighboring countries, they're really going on ahead with developing some of their blue economies and their economies in general. For example, Rwanda wants to become a regional hub for international travel, and for example, Emirates and Qatar we want to make Kigali as their regional hub. So how do we then link this blue economy to even the hinterland? So our analysis and assessment is going to be very broad, and it's going to provide an out-of-the-box kind of thinking. If I may look at another sector, which is port development. How do we strengthen our ports as a gateway to trade? How do we make Kenya a regional hub? The PS for Maritime yesterday talked about Kenya being a regional hub for the Belt and Road Initiative in China. So how do we improve our port efficiency vis-a-vis the region? So those are some of the ideas we have for the study. And we're looking at all levels, from the macro and micro, which means that we're not forgetting, for example, the small scale players in the different sectors, the artisanal fisheries, for example. How do we strengthen BMUs? How do we empower them so that they can even become bigger? For example, if you look at countries like Somalia, they have a very successful case of fishing cooperatives, and they were able to be provided with vessels, and they went deeper inshore. So that's just a brief idea of what we are working on, and we hope that we shall provide concrete inputs for all these sectors. And if you look at our approaches and the principles of MSP on this slide, we have tried as much as possible to incorporate them in all these sectors, which means that our work shall be integrated across the sectors. Our assessment shall be both strategic and future-oriented, shall be participatory, shall be adaptive, ecosystem-based, and place-based, which means we shall focus mostly on the activities in our EEZ, and also linking to the hinterland and the opportunities that are inward that directly depend on the ocean and vice versa. Next slide, please. So the key outputs of the assessment is a baseline study on the blue economy sectors, and it can include sector-specific reports for the outlined sectors. We shall also develop a synthesis report and policy briefs on priority sectors, and we shall also have an outline of an annotated outline of a national blue economy strategy. And we hope to achieve this by March next year. And we shall also organize a stakeholder workshop, validation workshop, maybe at the end of January, to invite all the relevant stakeholders and get their inputs on our initial draft. And something that I forgot to mention in my previous slide, in assessing the values and potentials, we are also going to try and project how new jobs that each sector can provide. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay. So this is actually my last slide. So what are the steps for MSP? This has been stated. Sorry, I think there's somewhere.
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. There's something missing.
Yeah, there was some background. There was some background noise, but now it's clear. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Please make sure that the mics are muted. So, as I was saying, this is my last slide. And so what are the next steps for MSP? So we believe that the assessment will provide a useful framework that can contribute to the MSP process. And MSP as a strategic priority for Kenya's blue economy should, number one, address the interconnectedness of major infrastructural projects, both current and future. And that has been well elaborated by Pascal in his presentation. And that we should also ensure that investments will address spatial competition and conflict between sectors. And thirdly, enhance environmental protection through protected habitats and ecosystems and pollution controls, and also achieve social economic objectives and the cultural needs for island and coastal communities. So what are some of the options that we can consider in doing so? So the first one is on whether we should apply MSP as a tool, simply as a tool as articulated in the Nairobi Convention decisions. Perhaps also we could design MSP as a legislative process. For example, South Africa enacted a Marine Spatial Planning Act in 2018, which provides a framework for MSP in the country. And in this act, there are several provisions. There's an institutional framework therein. For example, they propose that all marine spatial plans have to be adopted by the Parliament, for example. So maybe this is one of the ways to do so, given that there are so many sectoral laws in each of the sectors. The other consideration would be, how do we design MSP? We could use the ecosystem-based approach or the integrated use approach. By this, I mean, what is the foundation of MSP? Is it conservation, or is this economic development? This is a philosophical question that needs to be answered. For example, when I skim through the South African process, there seems to be a focus on integrated use, MSP, and also economic development. Fourthly, how does MSP interact with other plans, like the ICZM policy that it has, and the coastal counties spatial plans, which are a legal requirement under the County Government Act. This was well elaborated yesterday by Valentine, so I need not delve more into that. So how are we going to link the two processes? That is a question that needs to be answered. And my next point is of marine spatial planning in areas beyond, and it's linked to the ABNJ. Primarily, this process is within waters, jurisdictional waters. However, as you're all aware, we have the BBNJ process going on within the framework of UNCLOS, and the four package elements have an impact on how MSP will be carried out. For example, the package on using area-based management tools, including marine protected areas in the high seas, where countries are required to conserve and sustainably use areas requiring protection in areas beyond national jurisdiction. I think the last step of the process is the final negotiation. There has been some delays because of the global pandemic, but when this agreement comes into force, it will definitely impact on how countries conduct MSP in their territorial waters. One of the principles that is being articulated within that process is connectivity, making sure that there's a connectivity between MPAs, both in the high seas and in the coastal states waters, and also the issue of coherence and complementarity in MPAs. So definitely this is not a standalone process. It will work very closely with the processes at national level. Another issue in the package element is the environment impact assessments, which is one of the major areas of discussion. And in this package element, countries are required to assess potential impacts of planned activities under their jurisdiction on their high seas, including cumulative effects and transboundary impacts. And they're also required to conduct sustainable environment assessments in their waters vis-a-vis the high seas. So it will be very interesting to see how this process develops and how countries conduct their activities in their national waters. Finally, and this has been elaborated by a team, how is the national process going to link to regional and global processes on MSP? For example, the MSP strategy for the Waweru region, and also the global MSP guidelines under development. I think that this is my last slide. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.